So in 1888, a postcard came out in Germany. It wasn't a picturesque painting of a lake. It wasn't a photo of a majestic mountain. It was kind of a simple drawing with some lines and some shades, and yet it got everyone talking because depending on how you looked at this picture, and you probably have seen it before, you had two completely different experiences. In fact, I'm pretty curious today to know, as you look at this picture, how many of you in this room and online, how many of you see a young woman? How many of you see the young woman? Hands up, the young woman people. Okay. How many of you see an old woman? Fascinating. The same drawing, the same lines, the same shades, and some of you see a young woman, some of you see an old woman. Now, I'm really interested to know, if you see a young woman, can you switch your perspective to see the old woman? And if you see the old woman, can you switch your perspective to see the young woman? How many of you can switch the perspective to see both? How many of you are stuck with one and you can't see the other? Okay, thank you. Thank you for that honesty. Well, I want to suggest to you that this 1888, 150-year-old postcard is a great picture of many of our experiences with the book of Revelation, the last book of the New Testament. Now, you might kind of find it funny that we're studying the book of Revelation on Mother's Day Child Dedication Weekend, especially if you're a guest here. You might say, this doesn't quite fit the Mother's Day vibe. And you need to know that we took on an audacious challenge 29 weeks ago where we as a church would read a chapter a day, every day. And we have worked our way through. We're on this past week, day 203, week 29 of 30 weeks. And it just so happens that we find ourselves in the book of Revelation. And we want to wrap up this 30-week series. And so we're going to take a bit of time to talk about Revelation. Now, in all honesty, there's probably a number of you that are not doing the reading challenge, so you haven't been reading the book of Revelation, chapter 4 to 14 this last week. And in fact, some of you maybe have never read the book of Revelation. And so I want to give you just sort of a little taste of what Revelation can be like. We read these words this past week in chapters 12 and 13. I'll just give you a little snippet here. A great sign appeared in heaven. A woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. She was pregnant and cried out in pain as she was about to give birth. Then another sign appeared in heaven, an enormous red dragon with 7 heads and 10 crowns, and 7 crowns on its heads. The dragon stood on the shore of the sea, and I saw a beast coming out of the sea. It had 10 horns and 7 heads, with 10 crowns on its horns, and on each head a blasphemous name. The beast I saw resembled a leopard, but had feet like those of a bear and a mouth like that of a lion. The dragon gave the beast his power and his throne and great authority. Yikes! It is no wonder that people avoid this book. It's no wonder that people are bewildered and scared and confused and misread, and often look at this book as being one of the most terrifying books in the Bible. Over the centuries, people have fixated on this book, or they've completely avoided this book. They have feared this book. They have argued about this book. They have split churches because of this book. They have looked at this book and seen a map of the future, what's going to happen, and I believe often completely missed the point. But one of the reasons I love that postcard from 1888, which was incidentally named my wife and my mother-in-law, because it's a picture of both, if you can see both there. One of the reasons I love that picture is because it's such a great example of how many people approach Revelation. They either see it one way, or they see it a completely other way, and yet these two different ways are legitimate ways of looking at the book. Now, for me growing up in the 1970s and 80s and 90s, I grew up in a time where I was told there was only one way to view the picture of Revelation, as a map of the future, as a code to be broken. And back then, as a church, we were obsessed with breaking the code. However, not just anybody could break the code. You had to be a very, very smart Bible scholar. So we had Bible scholars that would come to our church and would teach out what was going to happen next in this code book. It was an apocalyptic crystal ball, all about the Great Tribulation and the Antichrist and the rapture and the mark of the beast and Russian invasion and computer chips under the skin, and somehow about every major event since 1973. It was all there. And I knew no other way of looking at this book than as a code book, as a map of the end times, until about 10 years ago, when I did a deep dive into Revelation and I began to see a different perspective. Now, I want to acknowledge that when it comes to talking about the book of Revelation, it can stir some very deep emotions. And it can touch some very spiritual places, depending on how this book helped form your faith. And messing around with the interpretation of the revelation can cause people frustration. And it can even raise anxiety and anger. But that's why I love my mother and my mother-in-law, the drawing, because it reminds us that there are two completely different ways depending on your perspective. And so today I want to say that if you are somebody who is very, very deeply rooted in what we call the futurist interpretation, which is the mapping out of this is what's going to happen in the future at the end of the world, if that is your interpretation, I want to tell you that I respect you. And I acknowledge your perspective. I acknowledge that you are seeing the book from that perspective. However, today, because many of us have never considered another perspective, I want to try and maybe explain a different way of understanding the revelation, the perspective that I personally have fallen into. Now, I want to not so much focus today on the secret code, or on figuring out and cracking that code, or the detailed timeline, or the divine spreadsheet approach, but rather I want to look at Revelation as a curtain being pulled back, as a collage of colliding images, as a fever dream of symbols. Let's take these one at a time. First of all, a curtain pulling back. I want you to imagine for a moment that you are a believer in Jesus in the city of Ephesus in the year 95 AD. Ephesus is a remarkable city. It is gorgeous. Marble streets, a lot of wealth, beautiful markets, a lot of wealthy people running these markets. Caesar is being worshipped everywhere. Caesar is the Roman emperor is seen as a god. In fact, many people greet one another, Caesar is Lord. I mean, that's just sort of common. And it's expected that you will burn the incense, you will say the words, you will agree with everybody, you will worship Caesar as Lord. However, that's a problem for you. Because a few years ago, you were introduced to Jesus Christ. And now you understand that Jesus Christ is King. Jesus Christ is Lord. You've given your life to Jesus Christ. And this makes living in Ephesus rather complicated. In fact, you're gathered early in the morning before the sun comes up in an underground church that is hidden away in somebody's home because it's dangerous for you to express your faith in Jesus publicly. Some people you know have already lost their businesses. Others have been persecuted and oppressed, and others have been beaten. Others have just sort of disappeared into some prison somewhere. And many people that you talk to that are old enough remember back to the years of Nero, about 30 years earlier, when Nero took Christians, covered them in pitch, and lit them on fire alive in his gardens to provide garden lights for his parties. They remember back to when Christians were hunted and executed. And so now you're beginning to wonder, and the people in this room are beginning to wonder, did we choose the wrong kingdom? Because it doesn't seem like our kingdom is winning. Is Jesus really reigning? Is this worth giving my life for? And then one day, as you're meeting in this underground church, in the secret church in a home, a scroll arrives. And it's from the old pastor John. John is one of the last, or is the last person to have actually walked with Jesus 60 years earlier. And John is writing from a barren rock called Patmos. This is where Rome puts the troublemakers, to punish them and to silence them. But somehow, John has managed to write this scroll, and it is traveling from church to church. And as somebody begins to unroll the scroll, they read the first three words: Apocalypsis Jesus Christus. The apocalypse of Jesus Christ. Now today, ask anybody at your office, in your neighborhood, at work, at the gym, any friends, what is an apocalypse? And they're going to have no problem defining what an apocalypse is because they've seen the movies. It's a whole genre of movie. Everybody knows that an apocalypse is a catastrophic, world-ending event or the total catastrophic destruction of society. Often it involves meteorites destroying the earth, or a nuclear war, or extraordinary cosmic activity. Sometimes aliens, sometimes zombies, sometimes a rogue AI that has taken over the world. And everybody knows that an apocalypse is a horrific world-ending event. So these opening words of this revelation only support that. We know that this is a horrific, violent, world-ending event because here it is. It says right there, the apocalypse of Jesus Christ. Except that sitting in that room in 95 AD, as you unscroll this and begin to read, you're not hearing the horrific, world-ending events of Jesus Christ. Rather, you're hearing apocalypsis, a word in Greek that means to you the unveiling, the revealing, the revelation, the revealing of what is hidden, the pulling back of the curtain. The original meaning of apocalypsis is not the end of the world in a horrific way, but rather the pulling back of a curtain so that you can see what is happening behind the scenes. The apocalypse, the revelation is a backstage pass. It's a backstage tour of what's happening in realms that you cannot see with your eyes. And so as best you can right now, I'd love for you to imagine that you are one of those believers in that underground secret church hiding away from the Roman Empire. And I'd love for you for just a moment to close your eyes. Just close your eyes. I want you to listen to something. You're in this place. You are frightened. It appears like somebody has ratted you out and has reported your little church, and the authorities are probably coming for you. You don't know if you're going to be arrested. You don't know if you're going to end up being executed. You have no idea what's about to happen. You are terrified, and then the scroll comes and somebody reads these words. And what impact do these words have on your heart? Listen to this. Eyes closed. After this I looked, and there before me was a door standing open in heaven. And the voice I had heard first hearing speaking to me like the trumpet said, "Come up here, and I will show you what must take place after this." And at once I was in the Spirit, and there before me was a throne in heaven with someone sitting on it. And the one who sat there had the appearance of jasper and ruby. A rainbow that shone like an emerald encircled the throne. Also in front of the throne there was what looked like a sea of glass, clear as crystal. In the center around the throne were 4 living creatures, and they were covered with eyes in front and in the back. The first living creature was like a lion, the second like an ox, the third a face of a man, and the fourth was like a flying eagle. Each of the 4 living creatures had 6 wings and was covered with eyes all around, even under his wings. Day and night they never stopped saying, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come." Now, you may not understand all of that, but if you were in a persecuted, being hunted place where you thought that Caesar and the Roman Empire was the ultimate power in the world about to take everything out, what would those words, what kind of impact would they have on you? Well, I think they would change everything. I think suddenly you would realize that Rome only looked ultimate, that Caesar only appeared to be invincible, that evil only appeared to be winning, because behind the scenes, there is another who is more powerful, a throne that Caesar is not sitting on, but Jesus is sitting on. The curtain is pulled back, and the first thing John sees is not a dragon or a beast or war or timelines of the end of the world. What John sees is a throne. He sees a throne, a victorious Savior, the one who is truly in charge and will be left standing long after Caesar and the empire have passed away. You see, the Revelation is resistance literature. It was written to embolden and to pump up and to strengthen the church and to reassure them that there was more going on than what they knew, and to tell them who was really in control and who the true king was and how the story ends. It's a pulling back of a curtain. So, number one, a curtain pulled back, designed to be resistance literature, an emboldeningly bold allegory to strengthen these struggling Christians. But number two, a collage of colliding images. Now, there's no doubt, if you read the chapters of Revelation, it is kind of overwhelming. It's sort of like an upward spiraling symphony designed to overwhelm you with victorious encouragement. The one way to look at the Revelation for many people is as a code to be cracked, as a crystal ball looking into the future, as a roadmap for what's going to happen at the end of time. And so many people look at this and they try to explain every element of it in context of our world. So they see the locust of Revelation 9, and what they see is Apache helicopters and military drones. And they see the mark of the beast in chapter 13, and what they see is implanted microchips and a cashless society. They read about Gog and Magog and in Revelation 20, and it's assumed that is Russia. And they read about Persia, and that's Iran, which of course is all over the news these days. They see the kings of the east in Revelation 9, and they believe that is China. And Babylon the Great in Revelation 17 and 18, that's often associated with America, or maybe more specifically Hollywood or Las Vegas. And then there's the beast and the Antichrist, and many have made conjectures about who this is. At one time in history, they believed it was Napoleon. And then Napoleon passed away, and history moved on, and they thought, it's Hitler, it's Stalin. There was a time when people believed it was Saddam Hussein. It was the United Nations, it was Putin. Just this past month, Tucker Carlson kind of let it slip that he was musing that maybe Donald Trump is the Antichrist. This isn't really super helpful when we go trying to identify all the specifics, because I believe this really is much more of an upward spiraling symphony, a collage of colliding images. Not so much a chart, but something rather to stir the emotions. In 1937, a small town in Spain, Galicia, was attacked during the Spanish Civil War. And the German warplanes and the Italian warplanes absolutely decimated this city. The streets were lit on fire, homes collapsed, the streets erupted in flames, mothers ran with their children, and people fled the city, but they were gunned down by the planes and machine guns, and it wasn't even a military target. I mean, this was a fairly peaceful town. It was market day, so it was full of women and children and farmers and ordinary people. But on this day, the bombs fell and utterly destroyed this town, left it in a smoldering pile of ruin. And the next day, a journalist came and took a picture, capturing for the world a photo of what was happening in terms of the documenting the destruction. The world was absolutely shocked by what had happened, including a Spanish artist named Pablo Picasso. And Picasso was so moved by this atrocity that he decided to paint a very large painting, and this is what he painted. Now, as you look at that, you notice that there are no airplanes, there are no bombs or blown up buildings or tanks or realistic battleground. Instead, Picasso was painting something that was going straight to the heart or the senses. You look at that painting, it's confusing, it's distorted, it's chaotic, it's almost like a bad dream. And if you look a little more closely and take time to absorb it, you see a screaming woman, you see broken bodies, a horse twisted in pain, a bull staring coldly, disconnected limbs, a mother holding a dead child, strange shapes, fractured faces, colliding images. You see, Picasso wasn't trying to document with accuracy on a spreadsheet what this looked like, but rather was trying to stir the emotions that this was full chaos. He was trying to help people feel the horror and the confusion and the emotional violence that war inflicts on humanity. Often people come to the apocalypse, to the revelation of John, and they're asking questions like, well, what nation is the beast? And what locust is the helicopter? And what politician is the Antichrist? And what technology will be the mark of the beast? But I believe that John was doing something much larger with this book, the last book of the Bible. It's a collage of colliding images that actually tell the story of the entire Bible and humanity. A spiraling symphony that tells the same story with repeated patterns. 7 churches challenged. And then it goes back to the beginning. 7 seals opened. And then the story goes back to the beginning, spiraling upwards. 7 trumpets blasted, 7 bowls of wrath, 7, of course, being God's perfect number. And it just adds to this emotional, upward, spiraling symphony, the colliding collage of images. He didn't set out to necessarily give us a timeline on the order of events towards the end of the coming of Christ, but not so much a spreadsheet or an engineered blueprint as much as a colliding collage of images spiraling upward, much more like a Picasso painting. So this other way of seeing the revelation is as, number one, a pulling back of the curtain. Resistance literature intended to encourage and embolden those who are feeling beat down and doubtful. A collage of colliding images intended to stir the senses. And number 3, a fever dream of symbols. When you read through the Revelation, it sounds strange. It's really hard to wrap your mind around all these images because the reality is it wasn't written primarily to you in 2026. It was written to a group of churches and a group of people at a time in history, and they understood the symbols. I want to do something maybe a little different today. I want to read for you a fictitious, modern, apocalyptic piece of literature. And what I'd like you to do, even as I read it, is I'd like you to see if you can decode it. If you can decode anything in this, okay? So if you're ready, you listen and see if you can decode any of the images or the objects in this. And I looked, and behold, the people of the earth carried in their hands smooth black stones, and the stones awakened at their touch. The stones glowed in the darkness and answered questions before words were fully formed upon the tongue. And the people and the omniscient stone that glowed were one. And the people trusted the stones to guide their paths, reveal secrets, interpret mysteries, and declare what was good, beautiful, desirable with 5 golden stars. Then through the omniscient stone arose the emerald queen with twin tails and a single star resting upon her brow. And she summoned the weary unto sacred houses on every corner. And the pilgrims brought offerings willingly, that their names might be written upon white vessels and their souls might be energized. And through the stone came also a trembling note, and it captivated the young with endless song and dance. And the people offered themselves joyfully unto the ceaseless scroll, desiring above all things to be seen, approved, and crowned by strangers. Then I saw an old peacock spreading its radiant feathers across the earth, proclaiming wars, judgments, and catastrophes, until the hearts of the people burned continually within them. And the peoples assembled themselves before glowing visions to behold the contests of the nations upon fields of emerald, where those from every nation gathered, lifting their voices as one, as a sacred vessel of gold is kissed before all the kingdoms of the world. And I saw that the stones had become a lamp unto humanity, and a companion at every hour, their guide, their merchant, their storyteller, their musician, and their oracle. And the stones knew where the people journeyed, what they desired, whom they loved, and what secrets they searched for in the darkness. And the people cried out together, who is like unto the omniscient stone, and what generation can survive without it? Now, I wonder if you saw some imagery there that you understood. In case you didn't, maybe we'll just review it fairly quickly. And I looked, and behold, the people of the earth carried in their hands smooth black stones. And the stones awakened at their touch. The stones glowed in the darkness and answered questions before words were fully formed upon the tongue. And the people and the omniscient stone that glowed were one. And the people trusted the stone to guide their paths, reveal secrets, interpret mysteries, and declare what was good, beautiful, and desirable with 5 golden stars. And then the omniscient stone arose, the emerald queen with twin tails and a single star resting upon her brow. And she summoned the weary unto sacred houses on every corner. And the pilgrims brought offerings willingly, that their names might be written upon white vessels, and their souls were energized. And through the stone came also a trembling note, and it captivated the young with endless song and dance. And the people offered themselves joyfully unto the ceaseless scroll, desiring above all things to be seen, approved, and crowned by strangers. Then I saw an old peacock spreading its radiant feathers across the earth, proclaiming wars and judgments and catastrophes, until the heart of the people burned continually within them. And the people assembled themselves before glowing visions to behold the contests of the nations upon the fields of emerald, where those from every nation gathered, lifting their voices as one, as a sacred vessel of gold is kissed before all kingdoms of the earth. And I saw that stone had become a lamp unto humanity, a companion at every hour, their guide, their merchant, their storyteller, their musician, and their oracle. And the stones knew where the people journeyed, what they desired, whom they loved, and what secrets they searched for in the darkness. And the people cried out, who is like unto the omniscient stone, and what generation can survive it? Then a great voice thundered from the heavens, saying, for the love of all that is holy, just put it on airplane mode and go to sleep. All right, my guess is that you recognized a lot of the symbols. But imagine somebody 2,000 years from now finding this apocalyptic prophecy and getting all excited and coming to church and saying, I found a prophecy. It's going to tell us about the future. In the future, people will carry magic stones that know everything, and they will glow and they will reveal secrets. And in the future, an emerald mermaid will rule the world along with a magical peacock whose powers reach around the world. And if you could talk to them, you'd say, no, no, no. Those were symbols. Those were ciphers. Those were images that we understood in 2026. They made sense to us. They told our story about our love of cell phones and the power of cell phones. But don't extrapolate this into something of your future. In just the chapters that we read this past week, chapters 4 to 14, I counted no less than 66 major symbols, characters, forces, images, objects, and apocalyptic elements. And the people in the first century who were suffering under the Roman Empire, who were facing oppression and persecution for their faith, would have completely understood those 66 symbols, characters, images, and objects. But to us today, they appear very confusing and a fever dream of symbols. So listen, after all the dragons, after all the beasts and the horns and the crowns and the thunder and the seals and the bowls and the colliding images and the fever dream of symbols, don't miss the point of the revelation. The revelation was not primarily about the Antichrist. It was not primarily about a roadmap to what's going to happen to end the world. It's not primarily about microchips or Russia or Iran or helicopters or secret codes. The revelation was a revelation of Jesus Christ. And regardless if you see the picture of a young woman or an old woman, regardless if you interpret the revelation as a future-telling timeline of what's about to happen, or you see it more as an idealistic sort of imagery, or you have actually no idea what it even means, don't miss the point. John is pulling back the curtain and saying, no matter what you are facing, no matter what you are going through, no matter what is threatening you, realize there is a king sitting on his throne. And Jesus says in Revelation 1, do not be afraid. I am the first and the last. I am the living one. I was dead, and now look, I am alive forever and ever. And I hold the keys of death and Hades. That's the revelation. The revelation is Jesus is alive. Jesus is king. Jesus is still on the throne. No empire, no government, no military, no virus, no beast, no dragon, no power, no fear, and certainly no force of hell is going to have the final words. Jesus will have the final words. So the point of the revelation is live your life in honor of and for the one who sits upon the throne.